If you ever wake up with proof someone touched you, but no one's there, don't look behind you. I didn't believe that kind of thing until this morning, until I opened my eyes and felt it. That faint, lingering pressure at my wrist like fingers had just let go, warm, real, impossible to ignore, and for a second I stayed completely still, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just one of those half-dreams that cling to you after sleep. But then I noticed the ring, a thin silver band sitting perfectly on my finger like it had always belonged there, and my stomach dropped. Because I don't wear rings, I've never owned one. I live alone in a 600-square-foot apartment on the 3rd floor with a deadbolt I check every night, twice, sometimes 3 times when my brain won't shut up, and yet there it was, cool against my skin, catching the early morning light like it had a right to exist, like it had a history I couldn't remember. I sat up too fast, heart kicking hard against my ribs, scanning the room. The chair by the window, the small kitchen counter, the door still. Locked, everything exactly where it should be. Except it didn't feel right. The air felt occupied, like when someone stands too close behind you, and you just know without seeing. I swallowed, forcing a laugh under my breath. Okay, very funny. Even though no one was there to hear it. And that's when I heard him, low, steady, so close it felt like the sound came from inside the space just behind my shoulder. You always say that when you're scared. I froze, every muscle locking up as the words settled into me. Familiar in a way that didn't make sense. I turned slowly, careful, like I might catch something if I didn't move too fast. But there was nothing, just empty space and the faint hum of the city outside. Traffic starting up, a car passing. Normal, 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 except my pulse wouldn't slow down. Who's there? I asked, and my voice didn't sound like mine. Too tight, too thin. Silence stretched for a second, too long enough that I almost convinced myself I imagined it. And then again, softer this time, closer. You forgot me again. Something in my chest twisted at that, sharpened. Sudden, like a memory trying to break through fog. I shook my head, stepping back until my calves hit the edge of the bed. No, I didn't forget anything. There's nothing to forget. I reached for my phone with shaking fingers, flipped the camera on, pointed it toward the empty space in front of me. If you're real, you'll show up, I said, breath catching, watching the screen, watching nothing, and then I felt it, unmistakable, fingers brushing lightly along the inside of my wrist, the same place I'd felt it when I woke up, gentle, deliberate, like he knew exactly how much pressure to use. My phone slipped in my grip. You don't need the camera, he murmured, almost amused. You never did. My throat went dry. I stared at my own reflection in the dark screen, the ring glinting there, undeniable, and whispered, "That doesn't make sense." A pause, and then, right at my ear, warm and close, "It does to us." My breath hitched, "Us." I repeated, barely audible, and for the first time, there was a smile in his voice, something soft and certain that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. "I'm your husband," he said, like it was the simplest truth in the world. Like it had always been true. And the worst part was, somewhere deep down, a part of me didn't immediately say he was wrong. I did not say anything after that, because my brain refused to catch up with what I had just heard. It just looped the words over and over like a broken recording. Husband, husband, husband. And every repetition made it feel less like a joke and more like something dangerously real. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move. One step backward, then another, until my shoulders pressed against the wall, grounding me in something solid, something I could trust. "That is not funny," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "I do not know you. I live alone. There is no one else here." Silence answered me for a moment. But it was not empty silence. It was the kind that feels watched, measured, like someone is waiting for you to finish pretending. And then he sighed, soft, almost disappointed. "You always start there," he said, and something in my chest tightened again. Not fear this time. Something else, something heavier, like recognition trying to surface through thick fog. I shook my head quickly, pushing it down. "Stop saying things like that," I snapped, grabbing my phone again and opening the camera, switching to video, flipping it to face the room. "If you are here, then this will show you." I held it out with both hands, arms locked, breath shallow, watching the screen carefully. The empty space in front of me, the bed, the chair, the door, all normal. All exactly as it should be. And then his voice came again, closer. You really think a piece of glass can hold me? My grip faltered. Then what are you? I demanded, louder this time, because anger felt safer than fear, easier to hold on to, easier to control. A pause, long enough that I thought he would not answer. And then, quieter, someone you chose. The words hit differently, not sharp, not threatening, just certain, like a fact that did not need proof. I let out a shaky laugh. I did not choose anything. I would remember. Would you? He asked gently. And suddenly he was closer. So close I could feel the shift in the air, the faint warmth brushing against the side of my neck. My breath caught, my body reacting before my mind could argue. Instinct pulling me completely still. You forget small things all the time. He continued, voice low, almost thoughtful. Where you left your keys, what you had for dinner, the name of the bar you liked last year. My fingers tightened around the phone, because he was right, and I hated that he was right. That is not the same, I said quickly. Forgetting a person is not the same. A soft hum of agreement, and then, not usually, something cold slid down my spine at that. What does that mean? I whispered, but instead of answering, his fingers brushed mine, slow, deliberate, guiding my hand down, and before I could pull away, he turned my wrist just enough for me to see it clearly. The ring again, gleaming under the light. Undeniable. You wore this every day, he murmured, and the way he said it, like he had seen it, like he remembered it, made my chest tighten painfully. No, I said, but it came out weaker, less certain. Take it off then, he said simply. I froze, staring at the ring, my fingers moving almost on their own, gripping the metal, pulling. It did not budge. I tried again, harder this time, twisting, tugging, my skin warming under the pressure, but it stayed exactly where it was, like it had been there for years, like it belonged there. My breath picked up, panic rising fast and sharp. Why will it not come off? I demanded. And this time he did not answer right away, his silence stretching just long enough to make my heart pound louder, faster, until finally he spoke, softer than before, almost careful. Because you put it there. I shook my head immediately. No, I did not. You did, he said. And there was no amusement left in his voice now. Only something steady, grounded, real in a way that made my stomach drop. And you promised you would not take it off again. My pulse stuttered, my mind scrambling for something. Anything that made sense, but all I could focus on was the weight on my finger and the way his presence felt closer now, like he was not just in the room, but anchored to me. Tell me your name, I said suddenly, desperate for something concrete, something human, something I could hold on to. A brief pause, and then, quietly, Adrian. The name settled into the space between us like it had always been there, like I should have known it, like I almost did. And mine, he added, softer, is the one you gave me. My throat went dry, because for a split second, just a flicker, a name brushed the edge of my mind. Familiar, intimate. And then it was gone, leaving behind nothing but the echo of his voice and the terrifying feeling that I was the one who had forgotten something I was never supposed to lose. I kept staring at my hand long after he stopped speaking, like if I looked hard enough the ring would explain itself, like it would suddenly turn into something normal, something I could dismiss. But it stayed exactly the same, solid, real, unmoving. And the worst part was not that it would not come off, it was that it felt right there, like it belonged, like it had always been part of me, and I had just forgotten to notice. Adrian, I repeated quietly, testing the name. And the moment it left my lips something shifted in the air, subtle but undeniable, like the room itself reacted, like I had just acknowledged something that had been waiting. Yes, he answered immediately, softer now, closer, and I could feel it again, that faint presence at my side, not touching yet, just there, steady, patient, like he was giving me space I did not know how to take. I forced myself to breathe slowly, in through my nose, out through my mouth, grounding myself the way I had learned to when anxiety hit too fast. If I know you, I said carefully, choosing each word. Then tell me something only I would remember. There was a pause, not hesitation, more like consideration, and then he moved. I did not see it, but I felt it, the shift in weight beside me, the mattress dipping slightly as if someone had sat down. My breath hitched before I could stop it. You hate the sound of ticking clocks, he said, voice low, calm, like he was reading from a list he knew by heart. You said it makes time feel louder than it should be. My stomach tightened, because that was true. I had said that before, more than once, but it was not something people usually remembered, not something important. That could be a guess, I said quickly, even though it sounded weak even to me. You drink your coffee black when you are stressed, he continued, unbothered. But you always add sugar when you think no one is paying attention. I swallowed, my eyes flicking toward the kitchen counter where my mug still sat from yesterday. A faint line of sugar crystals at the bottom I had been too tired to wash out. You hum when you are trying to focus, but you stop when you realize you are doing it. My chest tightened again, sharper this time, because that was not something anyone had ever pointed out, not out loud, not like that. I shook my head anyway, stubborn, clinging to denial like it was the only stable ground left. That does not mean anything, I insisted. People notice things, not like this, he said gently, and then his fingers brushed mine again, light, almost hesitant, like he was waiting to see if I would pull away. I did not. Not this time. And that scared me more than anything else so far. Tell me something else, I said, my voice quieter now, less defensive, more uncertain. A soft exhale answered me. And then, you used to fall asleep on the couch, he said. Every night, even when you told yourself you would not. My heart skipped, because I still did that sometimes, waking up with a stiff neck and the television still playing. And I would carry you to bed, he added, so casually it almost did not register at first. But when it did, my breath caught hard in my throat. No, I said immediately, too quickly. No one has ever. I stopped, because I could not finish the sentence, because for a split second, just a flicker, I felt it. Not a memory exactly, more like the echo of one, the sensation of being lifted, of warmth, of something steady and safe, and it vanished before I could grab onto it, leaving me dizzy, disoriented. You are lying, I whispered, but it sounded more like I was trying to convince myself than him. If I was lying, Adrian said quietly, closer now, his voice right at the edge of my hearing. Why would it feel familiar? I did not answer, because I could not, because the truth was sitting right there in my chest, heavy and undeniable, and I did not know what to do with it. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls too close, the air too thick. This is not possible, I said finally. But even as I said it, my fingers tightened unconsciously around the ring, like I was afraid it might disappear if I let go. And that thought alone made something inside me shift, something dangerous, something that whispered that maybe, just maybe, losing him would be worse than not understanding him at all. I should have stepped back, should have put distance between me and whatever this was. But I did not move. I stayed exactly where I was, fingers still curled around the ring like it was anchoring me in place. And that realization alone made my chest tighten in a way that felt dangerously close to acceptance. This is not real, I said again, quieter now, like the words had lost their edge. Like I was repeating something I no longer fully believed. Then why are you still talking to me? Adrian replied gently, and there was no challenge in his tone, no pressure, just quiet certainty that settled deeper than any argument could. I let out a slow breath and dragged a hand through my hair, trying to think, trying to find something logical, something grounded. Okay, I muttered, pacing a small circle in the room, 3 steps forward, 3 steps back, the walls feeling closer with every turn. Okay, if this is some kind of hallucination, then it has to follow rules. I stopped and looked straight ahead, focusing on the space where his voice seemed to come from. Hallucinations cannot interact with objects consistently. They cannot. I froze mid-sentence because something moved, not in my head, not imagined. The closet door behind me creaked open just an inch, slow, deliberate, like someone had pushed it. My breath caught hard. You were saying, Adrian murmured, calm, almost amused. I turned sharply, staring at the door, at the thin line of darkness. Inside, my pulse loud in my ears. You did that, I whispered. You moved that. You always leave it slightly open. He said instead, like that explained everything. Like that was the important part. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry, because he was right again. I did leave it open sometimes without thinking, but that did not explain how it had moved. Close it, I said quickly, the words coming out sharper than I intended. If you are real, close it. There was a brief pause, just long. Enough to make me wonder if I had pushed too far, and then the door shifted, slowly, steadily, until it clicked shut, the sound echoing too loudly in the small room. My breath left me all at once, a shaky exhale I could not hold back. That is not possible, I said again, but it sounded hollow now, like the words had no weight left, like they were just noise. You keep saying that, Adrian replied softly, and this time I felt it. Unmistakable, his hand resting lightly against my shoulder, not heavy, not forcing, just there, warm and steady. My body went completely still, every nerve suddenly aware of the exact point where he touched me. Stop, I said, but I did not pull away, I did not step back, and I hated that, hated how natural it felt, like my body recognized him even if my mind refused to. You are shaking, he said quietly, and there was something different in his voice now, something softer, something that made my chest tighten for a completely different reason. Of course I am shaking. I snapped, finally stepping away, breaking the contact, the absence of it immediate and noticeable, like stepping out of warmth into cold air. There is a man I cannot see standing in my apartment, moving things, touching me, and telling me we are married. What part of that sounds normal to you? Silence followed. But it was not empty. It was heavy, filled with something I could not quite name. And then, slowly, none of it, Adrian admitted, and the honesty in that answer caught me off guard, made me pause. Then why are you so calm? I asked, my voice quieter now, less defensive, more uncertain. A faint exhale brushed past my ear, almost like a laugh, but softer. Because I have done this before, he said, and the words sent a chill down my spine. Not cold exactly, but deep, unsettling. Done what before? I asked, my throat tightening as I turned slightly, trying again to find him, to see something, anything. But there was still nothing there, just empty space and the weight of his presence. Watched you forget me, he answered, and this time there was no amusement left, no calm distance. Just something quiet and heavy that settled into my chest like it belonged there, like it had always been there. And for a moment, just a brief, terrifying moment, I wondered how many times this had already happened, and how many times I had stood in this exact spot, asking the same questions, hearing the same answers, and still not remembering him at all. I did not answer him right away because my mind got stuck on that one sentence, looping it over and over like it was trying to force meaning out of something it could not fully process. Watched you forget me, watched you forget me, watched you forget me, and the more I thought about it, the worse it felt, like standing on the edge of something deep and not knowing how far it went. How many times? I asked finally, my voice quieter than before, not defensive anymore, just tired, confused, searching. There was a pause, longer this time, heavy in a way that made my chest tighten before he even spoke. Enough that I stopped counting. Adrian said, and the way he said it, soft but certain, made something in me shift uncomfortably, like guilt brushing against something I could not remember doing. I shook my head quickly, trying to push that feeling away. No, that does not make sense. If I forgot you once, maybe, but multiple times, that is not normal. People do not just reset. You do, he replied simply, and that simplicity hit harder than any explanation could have. I let out a shaky breath and turned away, pacing again, but slower now, like my energy was draining, like fighting this was taking more out of me than I expected. Then explain it, I said, stopping near the window, staring out at the street below where everything looked normal, cars moving, people walking, the world continuing like nothing was wrong. If you have done this before, if I have forgotten you before, then explain how that is even possible. Silence stretched for a moment, and I could feel him thinking, not avoiding, not hiding, just choosing his words carefully. You do not forget everything, he said eventually. Just me. That made me turn back immediately, frustration flaring again. That is worse, I snapped. That is not an explanation. That is just making it sound more insane. A faint exhale, almost like he expected that reaction. It is not random, he added, and that caught my attention, because it sounded like a clue, like something I could actually hold on to. Then what is it? I pressed, stepping closer to where his voice felt strongest. Why would I only forget you? There was a slight shift in the air, like he moved, like he was facing me directly now, Because you asked for it, he said quietly. And the words hit like a sudden drop, sharp and disorienting. No, I said immediately, instinctively rejecting it. I would not ask for something like that. You did, he repeated, still calm, still certain. You asked me to let you forget. My heart started pounding again, faster this time, not from fear, but from something else, something deeper, something that felt dangerously close to recognition. Why would I do that? I demanded, but my voice had lost its edge again, slipping into uncertainty, into something softer. Because remembering hurts, Adrian said, and this time there was no pause, no hesitation, just quiet truth that settled heavily in the space between us. I swallowed, my throat suddenly tight, because that made sense in a way I did not want it to. People avoided pain, people buried things, forgot things on purpose sometimes, but not like this, not a whole person, not something this big. That is not enough, I said, shaking my head, even as my chest tightened. No one erases someone they love just because it hurts. Silence answered me again. But it was different now. Heavier, like something had shifted, like I had said something important without realizing it. And then, softly, you did not erase someone you loved, Adrian said, his voice lower now. Closer, you erased someone you could not keep. The words settled into me slowly, each one heavier than the last, and I felt it again, that flicker, that almost memory brushing against the edge of my mind, something slipping away, something I could not hold on to no matter how hard I tried. What does that mean? I whispered, because suddenly I was afraid of the answer, afraid of what it might unlock. A faint warmth brushed against my hand again, gentle, steady, grounding. It means, he said, quietly, you chose a life where I could not exist. My breath caught, my fingers tightening unconsciously around the ring again. That does not make sense, I said, but the words felt weaker now, less certain, because deep down something was shifting, something was starting to align in a way I could not stop. Then why are you here? I added quickly, clinging to the one question that still mattered, the one thing that might give me control back. If I erased you, if I chose a life where you cannot exist, then why are you still here? There was a long pause this time, longer than any before, and for the first time since this started, I felt something change in him. Not distance, not absence, but something quieter, something more fragile. And when he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I had ever heard it, almost like it did not belong to the same person. Because you never really let me go, he said, and the words sank into my chest like they had always been there, waiting. And for a moment, just a moment, I wondered if forgetting him had not been the only thing I had done, if maybe, somehow, I had also been the one keeping him here. The room felt different after he said that, like the air had shifted into something heavier, something I could not step out of anymore. And I realized I had stopped trying to leave, stopped thinking about grabbing my keys, walking out, calling someone, because a part of me already knew there was nowhere I could go that he would not follow, or maybe worse, nowhere I could go where he would still be there. And that thought alone made my chest tighten in a way I did not understand. So what now? I asked quietly, my voice no longer sharp, no longer defensive, just uncertain. If I erased you but did not let you go, then what does that make this? I gestured vaguely to the space around me, to the apartment, to the invisible line where he seemed to exist just out of reach. What are you? There was a pause, not empty, not distant, just thoughtful, like he was choosing how much truth I could handle. I am what is left, Adrian said finally, and the simplicity of that answer made something twist inside me. Left of what? I pressed, because I needed more than that. I needed something solid, something I could hold on to, but instead of answering directly, he stepped closer. I felt it immediately, the shift in temperature, the faint warmth near my side, and then his hand found mine again, more certain this time, fingers sliding between mine like it was familiar, like it was something we had done countless times before. My breath caught, not because it was wrong, but because it was not, because it felt natural in a way that made no sense. You always ask too many questions when you are scared, he murmured, and there was something softer in his voice now, something almost fond, and that word, fond, hit me harder than it should have, because it implied history, something shared, something real. Do not do that, I said quickly, trying to pull my hand back, But my fingers hesitated for just a second too long, like they did not want to let go, like they recognized him even if I did not, and that hesitation did more damage than anything else so far. Do not act like you know me. I added, quieter now, but it sounded weak, uncertain. I do know you. He replied gently, and there was no arrogance in it, no insistence, just quiet certainty that settled into me like gravity. You just do not know me anymore. I swallowed, my throat tight, because that was the part that hurt. That was the part that felt unfair. Then fix it, I said suddenly, the words coming out before I could think them through. If this has happened before, if I have forgotten you before, then fix it this time. Make me remember. The moment the words left my mouth, something changed. I felt it immediately, the way his grip on my hand stilled, the way the air seemed to hold its breath, and for the first time since this started, he did not answer right away. Adrian. I pushed, more desperate now. If you know everything, if you have done this before, then just tell me how to remember you. Silence stretched, long and heavy, and I felt something unfamiliar from him. Not distance, not absence, but hesitation, real hesitation, and that scared me more than anything else so far. I could, he said finally, his voice lower. Now, more careful. I know how. My heart jumped, a flicker of relief breaking through the confusion. Then do it, I said immediately, stepping closer without realizing it. I do not want to keep going like this. I do not want to stand here and feel like I am missing something I cannot even name. Another pause, heavier this time, and then his thumb brushed slowly over the back of my hand, grounding, steady. If you remember everything, he said quietly, I will not be able to stay. The words hit like a sudden drop, sharp and disorienting. What? I breathed, my grip tightening instinctively. That does not make sense. It does, he replied, still calm, still steady, but there was something deeper. Under it now, something I could not quite name. You built it that way. My pulse quickened, confusion twisting into something more complicated, something heavier. So you are telling me, I said slowly, trying to piece it together, that I either remember you and lose you, or forget you and keep you. A faint exhale answered me, almost like a sad agreement. Yes, Adrian said, and the simplicity of that answer made everything else feel impossibly complicated. I stared at my hand, at the ring, at the place where his fingers still rested against mine, and for the first time, the fear shifted into something else entirely, something quieter, something more dangerous, because it was not about whether he was real anymore. It was about what I was willing to lose to prove it, and I did not know which answer scared me more. I did not pull my hand away this time, and that realization came a second too late, settling in my chest like something heavy and undeniable, because it meant I had already started choosing without realizing it, already leaning towards something I could not fully understand. That is not fair, I said quietly, staring down at where our hands met, at the space that should have been empty, but was not. You are asking me to choose between something I cannot remember and something I cannot keep. Adrian did not answer immediately, but I felt his grip shift slightly, his thumb brushing once across my knuckles like a grounding gesture, like he had done it before, many times. I am not asking you to choose, he said finally, softer than before. You already did. My breath caught at that, sharp and sudden. Then why does it feel like I am deciding this for the first time? I asked, my voice tightening. Because that was the part that did not make sense. That was the part that felt wrong. Because every time you forget, he replied, you become someone who has not made that choice yet. The words settled slowly, layering over everything else he had said, and the more I thought about it, the worse it felt, like being trapped in a loop I could not see the beginning or the end of. So I just keep repeating this. I whispered, more to myself than to him, standing here, asking the same questions, making the same decision, not always the same. Adrian corrected gently, and something in his tone made me look up, made me focus on him even though I still could not see him. What does that mean? I asked, my pulse picking up again, because there was something in that answer, something important, a slight pause, like he was considering how much to say. And then, sometimes you try to remember, he said. Sometimes you refuse. My chest tightened at that. And this time, I asked, quieter now, what am I doing this time? The silence that followed was not long, but it felt heavier than anything else so far, like it carried weight from something I did not have access to. "You are still deciding," he said, and the way he said it made something twist inside me. Something uncertain, something fragile. I swallowed and looked down at the ring again, turning it slightly with my thumb, feeling the smooth edge, the way it fit perfectly, like it had never been out of place. "If I try to remember," I said slowly, thinking through each word. "If I actually try, not just ask questions, but really try, what happens?" Adrian's grip tightened just a fraction, barely noticeable, but enough that I felt it, enough that it meant something. "You get closer," he answered, and there was something careful in his tone now, something almost cautious. "Closer to what?" I pressed, my voice barely above a whisper. "To everything you erased," he said, and that answer sent a quiet chill through me. Not cold, not fear exactly, but something deeper, something that felt like standing at the edge of a memory I could not see. "And you," I added quickly, "do I get closer to you too?" There was a pause, longer this time, and when he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I had ever heard it. "Yes," he said, "but only until you remember enough." My fingers tightened around his instinctively. "Enough for what?" I asked, even though a part of me already knew. A part of me did not want to hear it said out loud. "Enough to let me go again," he answered, and the words landed quietly, but they hit harder than anything else so far, because this was not just something that had happened once. It was something I had done before, something I might do again, something I might already be doing without realizing it. I shook my head slowly, trying to push back against that idea. Why would I keep choosing that? I whispered, because that was the part that made the least sense, the part that felt the most wrong. Adrian's hand shifted, moving slightly, so that his fingers laced more firmly with mine. "More deliberate now, more certain, because you think it is the right thing to do," he said quietly, and there was no accusation in his voice, no anger, just something steady and deeply familiar. "And is it?" I asked before I could stop myself, the question slipping out, fragile and uncertain. The silence that followed was different this time, not heavy, not tense, but quiet in a way that felt almost sad. "I do not know," Adrian admitted softly, and that answer, more than anything else, made my chest tighten, because if he did not know, then neither did I. And for the first time since this started, I realized that whatever choice I made next might not just affect me. It might decide whether he existed at all, and the terrifying part was not that I had to choose. It was that a part of me was already leaning toward remembering, even knowing what it might cost. I should have let go of his hand right then, should have stepped back and forced distance between us before anything else changed. But I did not. I stayed exactly where I was, fingers still intertwined with something I could not see, something I was not supposed to understand, and that hesitation, that small, quiet choice, felt bigger than anything we had said so far. "Show me something," I said suddenly, my voice steadier than I felt, because thinking felt safer than feeling. "If I am supposed to remember, then show me something real, something I cannot explain away." Adrian did not respond immediately, but I felt the shift, the way his presence moved slightly, like he was turning toward me fully, focusing in a way that made my chest tighten. "You already have something real," he said softly, and his fingers tightened just enough to remind me he was still there. "That is not enough," I insisted, shaking my head even though he could not see it. "I need more than a feeling, more than a voice. I need proof." There was a pause, and then a quiet exhale, almost thoughtful. "You always say that," he murmured, and before I could respond, he moved, not away, but closer, until I could feel the warmth of him at my side, the faint pressure of his presence aligning with mine. And then something shifted in the room, subtle but undeniable. The light near the window flickered slightly, the air thickening like something unseen had just stepped forward. "Look at the mirror," he said, and something in his tone made my breath catch before I even turned. I hesitated for a second, just one, because a part of me already knew this would change something. And then I looked. My reflection stared back at me exactly as it should. Same tired eyes, same rumpled shirt, same silver ring catching the light on my finger, but then something else. Something wrong. Not beside me, not behind me, but closer than that. A shadow that did not match the room. A faint outline standing just slightly out of sync with my own reflection. My breath stopped completely. "Do you see it?" Adrian asked quietly, and I could hear something in his voice now. Something careful, something almost cautious, like he was waiting for my reaction. Yes, I whispered, because there was no denying it. It was there, faint but unmistakable, like someone standing too close to be fully seen, like a reflection that did not belong. I stepped closer to the mirror without thinking, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears, and the shape shifted slightly, just enough that I could almost make out a shoulder, the line of a neck, the suggestion of a presence that should not exist. That is me, Adrian said softly, and my chest tightened at the way he said it. Not proud, not dramatic, just honest, like he was showing me something fragile, something that could disappear if I looked away too fast. Why can I see you? There, I asked, my voice barely steady. But not anywhere else. A pause, and then, because you are looking at yourself, he replied, and the answer did not make sense at first, not until I really looked, not just at the reflection, but at the space around it, at the way his outline seemed anchored to mine, overlapping just slightly, like we were standing in the same place, just out of sync. You are tied to me, I said slowly, the realization forming piece by piece. That is why no one else can see you. Yes, Adrian answered quietly. And this time there was no hesitation, no softness, just truth. I stared at the mirror, at the shape that should not exist, and for a second, just a second, I thought I saw more. A flicker of detail, the curve of a jaw, the hint of eyes that were not mine, and then it was gone, like my mind could not hold on to it for too long. If I remember more, I said slowly, not looking away from the mirror, will I be able to see you completely? The silence behind me stretched, heavy and careful, and when he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before, almost reluctant. Yes, he said, but only until the moment you understand everything. My fingers tightened unconsciously around the edge of the dresser, grounding myself. And then you disappear. I added, not as a question, but as something I already knew, something I was starting to accept. A faint breath brushed against the back of my neck, warm and steady. Yes, Adrian repeated softly, and this time, the word did not feel distant. It felt close, real in a way that made my chest ache, because now I had proof, not just of him, but of the choice I was about to make, and for the first time, I realized that seeing him more clearly might also be the thing that made me lose him completely. I could not look away from the mirror even after the shape faded, even after it became just my reflection again, because now I knew what had been there. Now I knew I was not imagining it, and that made everything feel heavier, more real, like I had crossed a line I could not step back from. Do it again, I said quietly, my voice barely steady. Show me again. There was a pause behind me, not long, but enough to feel deliberate, like he was weighing something I could not see. You are sure? Adrian asked softly, and there was something different in his tone now, something almost cautious, like he already knew the answer but needed to hear me say it anyway. I swallowed, my fingers tightening slightly against the dresser, grounding myself. I need to know, I said, and this time my voice did not shake, not because I was not afraid, but because the fear had shifted into something else, something stronger, something that pushed me forward instead of holding me back. Another pause, and then I felt it, his presence moving closer, more defined than before, like he was stepping into focus even if I still could not see him directly. All right, he murmured, and the moment the words left his lips, the air changed again, subtle but undeniable, the same heaviness settling around me, the same distortion in the light, and I turned toward the mirror before I could second-guess myself. My reflection stared back at me, but this time it was different, clearer, sharper, and the shape beside me was not just a shadow anymore. It had form. Now, faint but unmistakable, the outline of a man standing close enough that our shoulders almost touched. My breath caught as I leaned in slightly, trying to see more, trying to hold on to it before it slipped away again. And this time, for just a second longer than before, I did. I saw the curve of his jaw, the line of his nose, the suggestion of eyes that were not mine, and something in my chest tightened so suddenly, it almost hurt, because it was familiar, not in a vague way, not in a maybe sense, but in a way that felt certain, like recognizing a face you had seen 1,000 times, even if you could not place where. You see me, Adrian said quietly, And there was something in his voice now, something softer, something that felt dangerously close to hope. I nodded before I could stop myself, my gaze still locked on the mirror. A little, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I can see parts of you. The shape shifted slightly, like he had moved, like he had stepped closer. And for a moment the reflection almost aligned, almost clear enough to fully see him, but not quite, never quite. That is how it starts, he said gently, and his words settled into me with a weight I could not ignore. I forced myself to look away from the mirror, turning back toward where he should have been standing, even though I knew I would see nothing. And that disconnect, that difference between what I knew was there and what I could actually see, made my chest ache in a way I could not explain. If I keep going, I said slowly, if I keep trying to remember, will you feel more real? A faint pause, and then, to you. Yes, Adrian answered, and there was something careful in his tone again, something measured, but not to anyone else. I let out a quiet breath, nodding to myself more than to him, because that made sense now, in a strange, unsettling way. Then it really is just me, I murmured, and the words felt heavier now, more final, like I was acknowledging something I could not undo. It has always been just you, he replied softly, and the way he said it made something in my chest tighten again, not from fear this time, but from something deeper, something that felt dangerously close to understanding. I glanced back at the mirror one more time, half expecting the reflection to be empty again, but for a split second, just a flicker, I saw him more clearly than before, standing beside me like he belonged there, like he had always been there. And then it was gone, fading back into nothing, leaving me alone again in the reflection, but not really alone, not anymore. And that was the part that scared me the most, because now that I had seen him, even just a little, I did not know if I could go back to not seeing him at all, and worse, I did not know if I wanted to. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at nothing and everything at the same time, my reflection empty again but my mind refusing to accept it, because I had seen him, not clearly, not completely, but enough that my brain could not file it away as imagination anymore. And that changed something, something quiet but permanent, like a switch had been flipped somewhere deep inside me. Say something, I muttered under my breath, not even sure what I expected, but the silence felt wrong. Now, heavier than before, like the absence of his voice meant more than it should. A second passed, then another, and for the first time since this started, there was no immediate response. My chest tightened slightly, an unfamiliar flicker of unease creeping in. Adrian, I said a little louder, turning slowly as if I might finally catch him if I moved just right. But there was still nothing, just empty space and the faint hum of the city outside, and that should have reassured me. It should have made things simpler, easier, but instead it made something twist uncomfortably in my chest, because now I knew what was missing, and I did not like the feeling of it. That is not funny, I added, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to push away the strange tension building under my ribs. A soft exhale brushed against my ear a second later, so faint I almost missed it. I am here, he said quietly, and the relief that followed hit me harder than it should have, sharp and immediate, like I had been holding my breath without realizing it. I froze at that, the realization, settling in slowly, uncomfortably, because that reaction, that relief, was not normal, not for someone I was supposed to be afraid of, not for something I did not even fully understand. You disappeared, I said, my voice quieter now, more controlled, but it still carried that edge I could not quite hide. No, Adrian replied gently. You just lost me for a second. My brows furrowed at that, confusion tightening in my chest again. What does that mean? I asked, turning toward where his voice came from, instinctively searching even though I knew I would not see him. It means you looked away, he said, and something about the way he said it made me pause, made me think, because it was not about direction, not about where I was facing. It was something else, something internal. I did not look away. I insisted, but even as I said it, doubt crept in, subtle but persistent. You did, he said softly, and I felt it again, that faint presence at my side, closer now, steadier, like he had stepped back into place. When you stop focusing on me, I fade. My breath caught slightly, the implication settling in piece by piece. So I am controlling this, I said slowly, testing the idea out. loud, trying to understand the shape of it. In a way, Adrian answered, and his voice was careful now, measured, like he was choosing how much to reveal. The more you remember, the more you see, the more you hold on to me. My fingers tightened unconsciously around the ring again, feeling the solid weight of it against my skin. And if I stop, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper now. If I stop trying to remember. There was a pause, brief but heavy, and then I become harder to reach, he said quietly, and the words settled into me with a strange kind of weight, not threatening, not forceful, just real, not gone. I pressed quickly, the question slipping out before I could stop it. You do not disappear if I stop. Another pause, longer this time, and when he answered, his voice was softer than before, almost careful. Not completely, he said. And that answer did not reassure me the way I expected it to. It only made things more complicated, more uncertain, because now I understood something I had not before. This was not just about remembering or forgetting. It was about attention, about focus, about how much of him I allowed to exist in my world. And that meant every moment mattered. Every second I chose to think about him or not think about him was shaping what he was, how real he could be. And that realization settled into my chest like something fragile, something dangerous, because it meant I was not just deciding whether to remember him, I was deciding how much of him I was willing to keep alive. And for the first time since this started, the question shifted from what is happening to me to what am I doing to him? And I did not know which answer scared me more. I did not move right away after he said that, because something about the way he explained it settled too deeply, too quietly. Like it had always been true, and I was only just catching up, and the more I thought about it, the more unsettling it became. Because this was not something happening to me, not entirely. This was something I was participating in, shaping, controlling without even realizing it. So if I think about you, I said slowly, testing the idea out loud, you stay. A faint shift in the air beside me answered before his voice did, subtle but immediate. Like he had stepped closer the moment I focused on him. Yes, Adrian said softly. And there was something steady in that answer, something that did not waver. I swallowed, my fingers tightening slightly around the ring again, grounding myself in the only solid proof I had. And if I stop, I continued, my voice quieter now. If I ignore you, if I pretend none of this is real. A brief pause followed. Not long, but enough to feel deliberate. Like he was choosing his words carefully. Then I become harder for you to find, he said. And this time there was something else under his tone, something faint, something I could not quite name, but it made my chest tighten anyway. Harder, I repeated, frowning slightly. Not gone, not gone, he confirmed gently. And that should have reassured me. It should have made things simpler, but it did not. It only made the situation feel more complicated, more fragile. Because it meant he existed in a space I could lose access to, a space that depended entirely on me. I let out a slow breath and leaned back against the dresser, staring at nothing again. But this time it felt different, because I knew he was there, because I could feel him even when I was not looking. This is not how people are supposed to exist, I muttered, more to myself than to him. People do not just depend on being remembered to stay real. I am not like other people. Adrian replied quietly, and the way he said it was not defensive, not bitter, just matter of fact, like it was something he had already accepted long before I ever had to. I pressed my lips together, thinking, trying to piece everything together into something that made sense, something that followed rules I understood, but every path led back to the same place, the same impossible conclusion. Then what are you? I asked again, not as a challenge this time, not as an accusation, just as a question I needed answered. There was a pause, longer than before, and I felt something shift in him, not distance, not absence, but something quieter, something heavier. I am someone you chose to keep, he said finally, and the words settled into me slowly, heavier with each second. Even after you let me go, my breath caught slightly, because that did not contradict anything he had said before. It fit. It filled in a gap I had not even realized was there. That does not make sense, I whispered, but it sounded weaker now, less certain. It does, Adrian said softly, and I felt his presence move again, closer, more defined, like he was stepping into the space I had just opened by focusing. on him. You made a life where I could not stay, he continued. But you could not let me disappear completely, so you left something behind. My fingers curled slightly, the ring pressing against my skin, suddenly heavier than before. Something like this, I said, lifting my hand slightly, even though he could not see it. Yes, he answered, and this time there was no hesitation, no softness, just truth. And as long as you hold on to it, as long as you keep looking for me, I can come back. I stared at my hand for a long moment, at the ring that should not exist, at the weight of it, the permanence of it. And for the first time, I realized it was not just proof. It was a choice, something I had decided to keep without remembering why. So, I am the reason you are here, I said slowly, the realization forming piece by piece. Adrian did not answer right away, but I felt his hand brush mine again. Light, steady, grounding. Yes, he said quietly, and there was something in his voice now. Something deeper, something that felt almost fragile. You are the only reason. My chest tightened at that, sharper this time, because it meant everything about him. Everything I was seeing, feeling, questioning. It all came back to me, to what I chose to remember, what I chose to forget, and suddenly the situation felt heavier than before, not because it was confusing, but because it was not, because it made a kind of sense I could not ignore anymore. Then if I stop, I said, my voice barely above a whisper now. If I stop thinking about you, stop looking for you. I hesitated, because I already knew the answer, because I could feel it in the way his presence seemed to still beside me, waiting. You will fade. I finished quietly, and the silence that followed was not empty. It was full, heavy with something unspoken, something that felt too close to loss. And when Adrian finally spoke, his voice was softer than it had ever been, almost like he was afraid of the answer himself. Only if you want me to, he said. And that was the moment everything shifted again, because it meant this was not just about memory, not just about understanding. It was about choice, every second of it, every thought, every moment I decided to hold on to him or let him slip away. And the terrifying part was not that I had the power to decide. It was that I did not know what I was supposed to choose. I did not respond right away after he said that, because the weight of it settled too deeply, too quietly, like something that had always been true and I was only just beginning to understand. And for the first time since this started, the silence between us did not feel empty. It felt full, like it was waiting for me to decide something I was not ready to decide. My fingers tightened slightly around the ring, feeling the solid edge press into my skin, grounding me, reminding me this was real, or at least real enough that I could not ignore it anymore. What did I choose? I asked finally, my voice softer now, stripped of all the sharp edges it had at the beginning. If I am the reason you are here, then what exactly did I decide? Adrian did not answer immediately, and the pause felt different this time. Not hesitation, not avoidance, but something heavier, like he was deciding whether I was ready to hear it. You chose to keep a version of me that would not break your life, he said quietly, and the words settled into me in a way that made my chest tighten before I even fully understood them. Break my life. I repeated, frowning slightly, because that sounded wrong. Too dramatic, too extreme. What does that even mean? I pushed, stepping closer to where his presence felt strongest, like I could get closer to the answer if I closed the distance. It means the real version of me could not exist in the life you wanted, he explained gently, and there was no accusation in his tone, no bitterness, just quiet truth. So you let that version go? My breath caught slightly at that, because something about the way he said it felt final, like it had already happened and could not be undone. And this, I gestured vaguely around us, to the space he occupied, to the way he existed just out of sight. This is what was left. This is what you allowed to stay. Adrian corrected softly, and that distinction mattered more than I wanted it to, because it meant this was not an accident, not something that happened to me. It was something I had created, something I had decided. Why would I do that? I asked again, but this time the question felt different, less like denial and more like something I genuinely needed to understand. There was a long pause, and when he finally answered, his voice was quieter than before, almost careful. Because you could not have both, he said. You could not keep me and keep everything else the same. The words settled heavily, pressing against something in my chest that felt dangerously close to recognition. like there was something just out of reach, something I almost remembered but could not quite grasp. So I chose everything else. I whispered, the realization forming slowly, piece by piece. Adrian did not answer right away, but I felt his presence shift slightly closer, like he was standing right beside me now, steady and certain. You chose a life that did not include me, he said softly, and there was no anger in it, just truth. But you could not completely let go, so you left yourself a way to find me again. My fingers tightened around the ring, the weight of it suddenly heavier than before, like it carried more meaning than just proof, like it was a reminder of something I had done, something I had decided. And every time I start to remember, I said slowly, thinking through it, I get closer to the real version of you. Yes, Adrian confirmed, and his voice was steady, grounded. And the closer you get, the more unstable this version becomes. My breath caught at that. Unstable how? I asked, even though a part of me already knew the answer, already felt it in the way his presence seemed to shift, to flicker just slightly when I focused too hard. Because this version is not meant to exist once you understand everything, he said quietly, and the words landed with a kind of finality that made my chest tighten painfully. I shook my head slightly, trying to push back against that. So the more I remember, the more I lose you, I said, and it was not a question, not anymore. Adrian's silence answered me for a moment, heavy and undeniable, before he finally spoke. Softer than ever, yes, he said. And this time there was something else in his voice, something I had not heard before, something that felt dangerously close to resignation, like he had already accepted an outcome I had not even fully faced yet. I looked down at my hand again, at the ring, at the way it fit perfectly, like it had always been there, like it belonged there, and for the first time, I understood what it really was. Not just proof, not just a connection, but a choice I had made. Something I had decided to keep even when I let everything else go. So what happens if I remember everything? I asked quietly, even though I already knew, even though the answer was sitting there between us, unspoken but undeniable. Adrian's presence shifted slightly, closer, like he was right behind me now, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than anything I had heard before, almost like it might disappear if I did not listen carefully. Then you will finally understand why you let me go, he said, and the words settled into me slowly, heavy and quiet. And you will let me go again. And this time, there was no doubt left, no confusion, no uncertainty, just a choice I had to make, one I had made before, one I might be making again. And the terrifying part was not that I knew what would happen. It was that a part of me was starting to understand why I chose it in the first place. I did not say anything after that, because there was nothing left to argue, nothing left to deny. Everything he said had settled into place in a way that felt too complete, too inevitable. Like I had already walked this exact path before and just could not remember the steps. My fingers rested lightly against the ring, tracing the edge of it slowly, as if I could feel the memory through the metal, as if something inside it might unlock if I focused hard enough. And for a moment, just a brief flicker, something did shift, not a full memory, not something clear, but a sensation, warm light spilling across a room that did not look like this one, laughter echoing softly. The feeling of someone standing close behind me, steady and familiar, and my breath caught as it vanished just as quickly as it came, leaving me standing in the same quiet apartment, staring at the same empty space. I almost saw it. I whispered, not even sure if I meant to say it out loud, but Adrian heard me. I knew he did, because his presence shifted closer immediately, like he had been waiting for that, like every small piece of memory mattered more than anything else. You always do, he said softly. And there was something in his voice now, something I had not heard before, not just calm, not just certainty, but something deeper, something that felt like both hope and resignation at the same time. And that contradiction made my chest tighten in a way I could not ignore. And then I lose it. I added quietly, my voice barely steady, because that was the part that hurt. That was the part that made this feel like something slipping through my fingers no matter how hard I tried to hold on. Yes, Adrian said. And this time there was no softness in the answer, no comfort, just truth. And I nodded slowly, even though he could not see it, because I understood now. Not everything, not completely, but enough. Enough to know what was happening, enough to know what I was about to choose. If I keep going, I said, my voice low, steady despite the way my chest felt tight. If I keep trying to remember, I will see more, understand more, and then I stopped because I did not need to finish the sentence. Because we both already knew how it ended. The silence between us confirmed it. Heavy and undeniable. And for a moment, I closed my eyes, just for a second, just long enough to feel it, the weight of the choice, the way it pressed against something deep inside me, something that felt older than this moment, older than this version of me. And when I opened them again, the room looked the same, but it felt different, like something had already shifted, like I had already taken a step I could not undo. Tell me how we met, I said quietly, and the words felt heavier than anything else I had said so far, because this was not just a question anymore. It was a decision. Adrian did not answer right away, and the pause stretched longer than before, filled with something unspoken, something that felt like hesitation, like he was giving me one last chance to step back. But I did not. I stood there, waiting, steady, certain in a way I had not been before, and finally he spoke, his voice softer than ever, almost like it might disappear if I did not listen carefully. You were not supposed to notice me, he said, and the words settled into the air between us, quiet and deliberate. Not at first. My breath caught slightly, something inside me reacting before I could understand why. But you did, he continued. You always do. I swallowed, my fingers tightening slightly around the ring, the weight of it grounding me as something inside my chest began to shift again. That same flicker, that same almost memory pushing against the surface. And when you did, Adrian added, his voice dropping just slightly, something deeper threading through it, something that felt like the beginning of something I had already lived once before. You smiled at me like I had always been there. And this time, the memory did not fade completely. This time it lingered just a second longer, just enough for me to feel it, the warmth, the familiarity, the certainty, and for the first time, I realized I was not just remembering him. I was remembering why I could not let him stay, and that realization hit harder than anything else, because it meant the answer I was about to find might be the same one I had chosen before, and the terrifying part was not that I might lose him again. It was that I was already starting to understand why I would.